Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Wednesday, March 6th. Starting a little later than usual. This is funny. Twitch didn't even drop a single frame when I started it streaming early. I guess that's just a good thing, and we should just take that as a good thing. There's nothing else to really say around that. Yeah. So, starting a little later today, apparently there's a notice for a Duelist Cup that will take place on the 12th. I just had some other stuff that acted as distractions. Quite the non-YouTube adventure, but nothing I would want to talk about, and frankly it's not that big of a deal, or just more out of the norm activity for me than what usually happens. And yeah, I'm generally going to have some more non-YouTube stuff just distracting me for probably the foreseeable future. Which is not to say that I didn't get any video game content and YouTube content made. I am now playing the Hand of Fate 2 after finishing, I guess, Divide by Sheep was the game I played before that, and that's just really just highlights how forgettable Divide by Sheep was. Let's just jump in to start playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I guess. The Xbox partner event happened, and we'll talk about that, although frankly it didn't look like there was that much really to talk about from the announcements from what I've seen so far. Hand of Fate 2 is a very weird game in the way it's designed, in that the first two tutorial missions, which are called tutorial missions, are too hard and far too close to the experience you would have in the first game. It really just makes the first couple hours of playing Hand of Fate 2 feel like it is nothing but more Hand of Fate 1, which is fine, but there is also kind of this feeling in my vague memory of Hand of Fate 1 that if I wanted to play more Hand of Fate 1, I could have just gone back and played more Hand of Fate 1. But then the changes start to come pretty quickly after you get past those first two tutorial missions, and then you realize, well, they have changed several things. I'd say it's kind of up in the air if they change things for the better or not. It might very well just be a matter of opinion between people as far as whether they feel like the added complexity of Hand of Fate 2 is really what people want. The biggest weirdness, I think, is that with Hand of Fate 1 and Hand of Fate 2 is that you're effectively just playing a deck building tabletop game with a narrator, and maybe the narrator narrated a little bit better in the first game and talks more generically in the second game, but I think the second game, with its two pieces of DLC, which that's a problem in itself, I think Hand of Fate 2 may be bigger, but the trade-off for it being bigger may very well be that it actually isn't as good of an experience, or as well narrated of an experience. But then, yeah, you're effectively playing this slow, take your time to make choices tabletop game in everything except for the fights, which the fights are effectively just punishments for whenever you fail a dice roll or you run into the end of the game and have to do a boss fight, just so they're certain that you do at least one boss fight in every mission. They've tied each mission to one of the major arcana of the tarot card, which limits them kind of down to 13 missions in total, which that's fine because the missions are long enough that that might be alright. And frankly, Hand of Fate 2 might wear out its welcome. It almost completely lost me. I failed 2 times at the very first mission, and nothing else is unlocked. It shows you that there are several things, but each one has a requirement to be unlocked. And so, if you cannot win the fight at the very first mission, the Fool mission is what it's labeled as, or if you couldn't win the fight for the Magician mission, which is the second mission, you're just screwed at that point. There's nothing else you can do. And so after failing twice, the game pops up and says, do you want to play in apprentice mode where we just make the fighting easier? And I was like, yes, please turn that on. But then why not just ask that at the beginning? Because I would have gladly chosen an easy mode if they had asked me to choose an easy mode. But yeah, that really highlights the great divergence that is here between what you're doing on the tabletop game, and you can take your time and do whatever you want, and then you load, and then when you load into this completely different game engine, you see lag for half a second, just a little bit of a stutter, and I don't want to assume that that is my computer causing the lag. I do need to probably go into BIOS and see, but yeah, it seems to me like it is more than likely a case that the games I've been playing recently just happen to all be laggy. But also I've played too many games in a row where it has been laggy. I think I'm probably just accomplishing daily quests in this game, and then should probably just let myself lose, because I think this is going to stop me from special summoning the things I need to special summon. But yeah, after going into easy mode, I was able to make more progress around Hand of Fate 2, and so now I'm capable of playing through everything. Although, even by the third mission on easy, the requirement, and this is one of the things I think they've tweaked more in the second game, the requirement to get the gold reward instead of just a silver reward to get just a gold reward instead of a silver reward for defeating the mission requires you to have 6 blessings. And without unlocking other cards by doing other missions, I just don't think you had any chance at all of actually earning 6 blessings in that mission. Blessings are just specific cards that give you boosts, and the opposite of curses. Let's see, we're gonna get a time surrender if we're not careful here. But yeah, I really haven't put in enough time to have anything else interesting to say. They did jump the timeline of Hand of Fate 2 to be 100 years after the events of Hand of Fate 1, which, if they continued that and made a third game, that would probably put them in modern times instead of a fantasy Tolkien-esque world, which probably wouldn't work very well. I do think they made minor improvements in Hand of Fate 2, but I think they probably rushed the game out early in the hope that people would be still hyped after the good press that Hand of Fate 1 had, or the original Hand of Fate had. So I definitely think, though, that the idea may very well have been wiser to take a couple more years before you make a Hand of Fate 2 and really expand upon it a lot more. Particularly if they had waited until, say, right now to release a Hand of Fate 2, you'd almost certainly could have had an AI text-to-speech engine that would have had every single bit of dialogue read out loud by the narrator, and then you just wouldn't have had to pay the extra budget. Interesting, this guy forces me to attack him, which means I probably can't summon Zeus. Nope. Still can summon Zeus. Interesting. That somehow still did damage. So yeah, if they had waited a few more years, you would have had full voice acting for every single piece of dialogue, and arguably you might even be able to take the step of having specific characters be voice acted. Hand of Fate 2 has a pointless character customization screen option that lets you pick between either being one generic kind of ugly male character versus another generic kind of ugly female character. In further customization there, you can pick from one of 4 lands that you're from, which just changes the color of your skin between being black, white, Asian, and maybe a little bit more tan, Mexican, I guess, would be maybe the hint there. And then you have like 3, maybe 4 hairstyles between that are just really dumb. One of which is bald for both the male and female. The hairstyles are different between males and females. Then there's an amulet ability to just have a specific amulet holding your cape together. It seems to really play no role. It doesn't seem like it changes your luck or give you a higher chance of certain events or anything like that. If it does something like that, the game has done a terrible job of explaining that. And then there's 4, maybe 5 color palettes, where you can have one color palette that is mostly ugly, as far as the different color palettes of your cloak and your armor. You don't get to really change your body mass, you don't get to really change your outfit. Yeah, you don't change any of that. And so all the character customization feels incredibly pointless, just like they were experimenting with it and then they gave up after a week or 2 of development. On top of that, you have weirdness where you can change your appearance in some locations mid-mission, but you can't change your gender and you can't change your race mid-mission, which seems kind of ridiculous. It just does not feel like there's a reason to be limited that way. I don't think any of the events react based on where you're from or based on your gender. The dialogue may change slightly from he to her based on gender, but you could easily just have it dynamically change that mid-mission. And it certainly is a fantasy environment where you could explain drinking some kind of magical elixir that lets you change your appearance easily. So yeah, it does. They definitely in the first couple of missions force you to customize your appearance, and it just wastes the player's time, particularly if you're playing that first mission a second time or a third time. But yeah, the worst part is still you have these really small arenas in Hand of Fate 2 with a camera that can't turn around, so if an enemy gets behind you, you just kind of have to hope you're not walking directly towards that enemy as he's about to take a swing at you. But yeah, there's small kind of asset flipped arenas that you wander around and you button mash for this hack and slash action fight sequence. And if the lag is the fault of the game, which I think it probably is, it more than likely is because they are in part shifting the game from one game engine to a completely different game engine for the fight sequences, and in part because they're randomly picking a background settings with trees and bridges and water and things like that, and they're loading all of that in and out of the video RAM, where if they perhaps just had an arena background that you loaded into video RAM the first time and you just kept it into the video RAM always, you'd probably avoid some of the lag, that 1 second lag as it's loading. But the fact that you're seeing a loading screen at all is enough to complain about. So even if we ignore the lag, you definitely are seeing a loading screen, and my computer is fast enough for I believe Hand of Fate 2 is a 2017 game. My NVMEs should be fast enough to just instantaneously go into those fight sequences. One thing that's an interesting comparison, I think, is Hand of Fate 2 to something like Gwent and The Witcher 3, in that Hand of Fate is almost the exact opposite of The Witcher 3, where Witcher 3 has Gwent as a small side mini-game that you can engage with or ignore, and then a much bigger open-world RPG hack-and-slash gameplay mechanic that you spend way more time in Witcher 3, and it's just the exact opposite. Hand of Fate is the small Gwent card game, is the vast majority of your time, and then there's just a small hack-and-slash fight sequences, which honestly I just don't think they work well. I think particularly if you were approaching Hand of Fate from the idea that you wanted to make it a real tabletop game that could be played in the real world, which even that would still be hard because there's just too many cards and too many rules and regulations around it in the way it's programmed. But if you were going to do that, you would have the fight sequences always be some kind of either card-based fighting or dice roll fighting, probably just dice roll fighting. And at the very least, you would have it be much closer to a JRPG where it's turn-based fighting. You select an attack, the attack executes, and then the next enemy with the most initiative or stamina moves, instead of just being real time. So, yeah. I do think, though, that's probably all I have to really say about Hand of Fate 2 at the moment. And I really have nothing to say about the Divide by Sheep. So, I think earlier, particularly since we're starting later in the afternoon, this is probably the exact time I should be streaming. I will say that, but it is also the time where I am normally right in that afternoon nap time for me, where I'm either deep into sleep or about to fall asleep. So let's cover the news. We probably will have a little bit more news today since it's Wednesday. We have a Gematsu article here that the infamous live action game that kind of was a porn, although I'm not sure it really has nudity. By modern standards might better describe it as a parody of porns, is coming out as a definitive edition, now available for the PS4 and 5, Xbox Series and Switch. PC version is due out later, at a later date. So notably, in this, there isn't seemingly a single platform, and these platforms all have stuck by the ESRB ratings, where at least for disc versions of games, you do have to have an ESRB rating. You'd think at least for the Switch. None of them really having any problem with plumbers don't wear ties. That being said, it's also important to point out that while this is a infamous game, it's pretty much just an infamous game for showing how low quality got around live action games in the Sega CD era, when we were hitting early CD-ROM capable of having live action games, live action footage, and yeah, that never really went anywhere further. A big part about that was Night Trap and the controversy that politicians made around Night Trap, but a bigger part around that is just the fact that there really are only 2 or 3 games that were live action games that really are worth playing. I'd think Double Switch, Night Trap, maybe Sewer Sharks. I might be forgetting 1 or 2 other live action games. Now you have things like Revolution X that have some kind of rotoscoped or live action footage in it, but I wouldn't say the games are 100% live action. And decades later, the number of live action games that are still worth playing, or that have come out since then, has not been particularly high either. There's a couple of things that have worked, but they almost all have worked either by comedy or by fluke. Her Story and the Sam Barlow games might be one of the few exceptions. Let's just activate everything while we can. I guess the question is, can I actually win in this one turn? Yeah, particularly if I don't try too hard, can I actually win? No, no, yes, no, yes, no, maybe. I guess I can probably win here. As long as I destroy that and then it takes damage. Nope, I'm 5 short. 500 short. But yeah, as far as plumbers don't wear ties, I don't even think that this is actual footage of the game here. I think this is closer to what the footage actually looked like. And honestly, this may be a game that actually doesn't have any video in it at all in the actual game. It may very well be a case that it is instead just a slideshow experience. See, it looks like what we're looking at here is either promo material that they've made new or promo material of what the game originally would have been. And see, certainly you can see that they are standing ridiculously in certain angles and positions. They may very well just be recreating poses that were in the game. It may be that the pictures and the people in this footage are the actors originally from the game. You know what's probably most interesting about all of this, about Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, is how it got the more coverage than, and it really highlighted how there wasn't enough responsibility and there weren't enough people ready to potentially have actual true adult games available on CD, or even adult movies on CD. Because yeah, there is definitely an alternate universe where instead of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties being used as a scapegoat to shut down the conversation of ever having adult media for adults on a video game console, you very well may have seen a speed up of the adoption of DVDs or video CDs, even for adult content. I imagine Plumbers Don't Wear Ties may very well have also been in between that gap before DVDs really became popular and VHS is still being very popular as far as adult content is concerned. And yeah, if Plumber Don't Wear Ties was with the Sega CD, then it really would have been 2, maybe even 3 generations after the Sega CD before the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 DVD playback capability became a real big deal. And even at that, the possibility of video game companies being involved in adult games had already pretty much dried up. So if you were watching adult DVDs on a PlayStation 2, they would have just been regular adult DVDs. The only companies still trying to make adult games would have shifted probably to PC gaming for what a smaller audience would have been there. There really hasn't been any resurgence at all as far as adult content in video game consoles, other than PC gaming and a lot of just like visual novels on Steam. And we still, as the game developer community still really hasn't grown up enough to embrace that idea. Yeah. Even GTA 6 is probably not going to have any adult content in it, when it is really the kind of game that almost certainly should have adult content in it when it comes out. And that probably also highlights why they tend not to have games where there's a male and female protagonist, is because there's then going to be that inherent assumption that a romance could happen. Baldur's Gate 3, I guess, and Witcher, I guess, both are games that did have more mature adult game content in it. And noticeably, I think both CD Projekt and Larian Studios are non-US based companies willing to go that direction. But yeah, the most recent purely adult game probably is just the most recent Leisure Suit Larry game, which would be like Wet Dreams Don't Dry Twice, I believe is the name of the most recent Leisure Suit Larry game that would be big enough to be mentioned. There definitely have been a lot more on Steam as far as adult games, but those would heavily just fall under the category of being PC only, and just never really have enough advertisement or enough media coverage to be anything that's strictly hidden. VR porn does exist, but it definitely hasn't been embraced, and as such VR also hasn't been embraced, so you have two parallel things there, probably not affecting each other that much. Steam Deck probably is a great place to play visual novels. The next Nintendo Switch probably won't be a great place to play adult content. That would be way too big of a twist and switch for Nintendo to go in that direction. Although Nintendo has betrayed everybody else, why not betray the parents and start selling adult games? Flaunting it. I mean, technically, I think they probably already have quite a few lewd games on the eShop. It also probably is the case that the old school kind of porn videos, like that Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is parodying, almost certainly don't really get made and don't exist nowadays. There are no more Blockbusters or like VHS shops that would need that level of content. I mean, I imagine there still are sex shops that exist, but I would imagine people are going to sex shops more and more to buy adult toys than they are just to buy videos. And it probably is just truckers, and even now I imagine truckers may just have unlimited streaming data, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense for them to buy, say, an adult DVD and then have some kind of DVD player in the back of their truck to watch the DVD when it could just be gotten over a cell phone data connection. Yeah. And certainly if you go to a website like Pornhub, you're not going to see a title labeled Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. You're not going to see a short film or feature-length film of adult content. You're going to see 10-20 minute clips that are going to be much more straightforward. They're probably just going to have the actors and actresses' name in it with a general description of what the scene or two is going to be that you see, and that there's probably not going to be a ton of effort to put a story or a narrative around it. Inherently, there may have been some legal reasons back in the day to have a story narrative to claim that it wasn't, to claim it was more artistic and that it wasn't therefore something that the government could censor if it had some form of artistic value. Unfortunately, I think the laws may still be on the books that something that would just be completely devoid of artistic value could be censored. It's a dumb standard, certainly, for a country that loves its free speech and freedom of expression, but that may very well be on the books still. With AI generated art, we're going to very quickly have anybody and everybody capable of making anything they ever wished for, regardless if the AI is generating art of celebrities who don't want fake nudes online, or whether somebody is asking an AI to generate someone at an inappropriately young age, or generate imagery that would be perhaps by most people's definition inappropriately violent or gory or horrific or something like that. That is perhaps one thing that AI will help society shed, as far as its potential hang-ups and trying to control other people's thoughts and expressions, particularly in the case of AI art, whether you're going to have to stretch to say there's any real victim when it's 100% AI generated. Inherently, there's a standard that probably should be followed, where it isn't illegal, if you can't be thrown in jail or fined for hanging yourself in your closet in your own home, committing violence and to the extremist level to yourself, then there should never be the argument that there should be laws to stop you from harming yourself if you're a sane, well-minded person. Perhaps there should be laws if you can be proven insane that society should stop you from harming yourself. But in the United States law system, at least, there really is nothing that stops you from having the quote-unquote God-given right to just off yourself if you want to. You're not at least fined. There probably are some countries where you're fined if you kill yourself, which would be really punitive. So if you can't harm yourself and be thrown in jail or fined, in many cases in the United States, then it's not that far of a step to say there needs to be a real victim other than yourself to make something illegal. And AI, in that case, again, you would have to stretch to find a real victim. At a certain point, yes, a celebrity may be the victim of a deep fake or fake nude made around them. But how much of a victim are they really because of that? And how do you stop that from happening anyways? Because it could happen now. Like, people have been writing fan fiction about celebrities and fantasies around celebrities, and they've been imagining fantasies around celebrities for probably hundreds of years. The fact that a computer can now bring a fantasy to life isn't that big of a change. So, I'm making a very long rant here to just point out that with AI generated art, just around the bend, as far as AI porn in particular, societies are going to probably have to just give up the pearl clutching, and maybe, just maybe, we will begin to see games like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties being made, but at a higher quality, one would hope, and at a higher level of acceptance. So basically games nothing like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. But yeah, we haven't had a lot of that. Like Succubus, from Madhead Studio, was one that tried that. But they were about the only people that got that far. I believe the game Stellar Blade from Shift Up is going to try to go lewd, not full nudity, but it's going to definitely try and push what is acceptable as far as lewd imagery in a AA, AAA game, mainstream game. The real problem, though, with games like Succubus, and there was a couple others before that and around that time, is that they just really don't turn out to be that good of games. And that may be the problem in particular, is that you're just crossing the streams between adult content and video games, and that's just never really going to work. And at best it will work with a lot of narrative and backstory in a visual novel format more than anything else. That if I was going to try personally to make an adult game with live action footage, I would be very uncertain as to how to really make that work. Yeah, that would be fairly questionable as far as how to go about doing that. At some point it might very well just make a chatbot that you can talk to without paying an OnlyFans subscription. Some chatbot that maybe you can direct around. We get an insight as far as what YouTube advertisers is talking about as I move subjects quickly. Now, that really wasn't quick. YouTube creators build deep relationships with their audience who trust them to provide authentic product recommendations. Makeup expert Hot and Flashy 50 explains how YouTube shopping affiliate program has helped her grow her channel. Which, yeah, that's definitely, I think, what YouTube would like is more of a cut on products and commercials. Effectively, people turning their YouTube channels into commercials. I don't know if YouTube creators really build deep relationships with their audience. I think that's probably not true. The creators themselves aren't really having deep relationships with their audience, and very easily could be lying to their audience to promote garbage. Or they may just be talking poorly from an uninformed angle or perspective. I imagine that happens a lot too. I watch a lot of tech reviews of tech and things like that. I really wouldn't trust anybody, even Linus Tech Tips, which is a major person I follow, for any actual purchasing tech advice. I watch a lot of smart home people that talk about smart home devices. I don't trust most of them because, particularly in the case of smart home devices, they only test the devices for maybe a few weeks, and they don't go into detail, and they don't really care about price. That's a major problem with a lot of tech reviews, is that they're getting the gadgets for free for review samples, or they're making so much money that they're just in a completely different financial state than your average person would be. They're just so rich that they can spend thousands of dollars on smart devices and it not be a big deal. That being said, I am not inherently swearing off doing affiliate products on my channel if I ever got monetized, but I definitely think it probably would be a case by case basis of really finding devices that I really would recommend personally. And particularly for me, if I was gonna talk or have affiliates to like smart home devices, they would be probably like Amazon listings to Chinese devices that often go out of supply very quickly. So you see a weird normalization where the kinds of affiliate links you can have on YouTube are somewhat limited, and the kinds of things that are put on sale as affiliate links are the same products over and over again. I'm trying to move over to the next news story. This is a Gematsu article. The PlayStation India Hero Project titles have been announced. Meteora, The Race Against Space-Time, Fishbowl, Mukti, Requital, Gates of Blood, Suri, The Seventh Note. These are again a hint at where PlayStation has been going, in that they've been funding the development of Indian games in the India Hero project and funding Chinese games in the China Hero project, instead of, say, funding, or at the very least not shutting down, more of their second party developers that have made things like Uncharted or Spider-Man or Last of Us. There's nothing wrong looking for the screenshots of these games, but I would say, if I recall correctly, the China Hero project is maybe a year older than the India Hero project, and we haven't really seen any of those games actually get released or make any big deal, make any big splash. It's not wrong for PlayStation, a Japanese company, to expand and invest in small indie companies around the world and get more diversity of the types of games and try to expand your audience. If anything, Microsoft should steal that idea completely, but perhaps they are just not giving them fancy names, and they are doing similar things. But certainly Microsoft could work a lot harder to get a foothold in countries that might be newer. Whoops. That was that one card that can use any card it's pointing to as a fusion material. that's why I probably should turn off automatic card placement, but it works well enough to not do that. And just save a little bit of time the rest of the times I play. But yeah, if Microsoft was trying to fund developers in say South America, if in India, in China, in Japan, in Korea, in Australia, if you can have a video game company succeed in Australia, even in Africa, if you just are splashing cash everywhere, you might have some level of success in a country, where then the Xbox in that one country is just way more popular and prominent, and then at least it would be more competition. Video Games Chronicle says Horizon Forbidden West Complete Edition PC specs have been confirmed. The game makes a jump from the PlayStation 5 to PC on March 21st. Okay. Let's see. Can we actually read any of this? If you want to be at the minimum preset, you need 720p at 30 seconds. You need an i30 or an AMD Ryzen 1300X, 16 gigabytes of DDR RAM, a GTX 1650, and Windows 10 64-bit version 1909 or higher. If you want to do it at 1080p, it's not much is changing. You need a 3060 and an i5 8600, 150 gigabytes of SSD space, which is quite a lot. As we see the storage space requirements go up and up and up, this really highlights where the games have just gotten too big on the visuals. It's not the music, for sure, and it's not the programming. And then 1440p is now the high standard, and 4K is a very high standard. I saw a slick deals for a like 2K gaming monitor. I don't think the stats were particularly good for it, but it was fairly cheap. And at some point, I could see myself pulling the trigger and buying a 2K monitor, but I just don't see myself, even then, really having enough money or enough desire to make 2K gaming or 1440p gaming a thing for me. I need to change so many things to accomplish that. I need to get a monitor that would be able to be mounted in front of my head on my recliner chair, which that's going to be hard to do, because yeah, there's no way I'm getting rid of the recliner chair. It means I'm abandoning the TVs that I already have set up, at least in part, so looking at things 8 feet away, which has been consistently a problem whenever I need to read text, and as my eyesight has perhaps gotten worse. But yeah, it still doesn't really address the biggest issue, which is just if I made 1440p video, how many people would actually watch it, and how much slower would it take to upload that footage. It really is more of a footage issue than anything else. Okay, well, we're almost exactly at an hour, so not getting any fusion link summoning, pendulum summoning done quick enough. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is take a short little bathroom break, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I don't know why I'm always apologizing. The amount of bathroom breaks I have to take due to just stomach troubles is it's just going to be consistent and high. Okay, moving on with video game news. Apparently, preservationists are upset at the Switch lawsuits to shut down the emulator Yuzu, and then very quickly the 3DS emulator Citra also shut itself down. In particular, in this case, the argument is even stronger in that 3DS support is non-existent at this point, or almost non-existent at this point. So there is no legal way to purchase and play a 3DS game, where at the very least the argument could have been made that the ROMs that you are playing on a Yuzu emulator probably still were available for purchase, assuming you're just not playing homebrew games or playing legal backup copies of games you've already bought. But yeah, and it looks like there probably is a new emulator called Nuzu already being run by possibly different people. Seems like it is always going to be just a whack-a-mole game, and I'm surprised Nintendo's lawyers have even found as many hackers and emulator makers as they have. But yeah, nothing's going to stop emulators from existing. And increasingly, emulators are going to get so good that they'll be able to emulate brand new games, not 7-year-old Switch titles, or emulate 7-year-old hardware that would be the latest thing. And had Nintendo simply released a Switch 2, say, 3 years ago, then they definitely wouldn't have given enough time in that period for somebody to make an emulator for their newest console. But yeah, also this probably highlights that Nintendo's strategy going forward is going to try to sue emulators out of existence instead of trying to make a more secure piece of hardware. So I wouldn't suspect that the next Nintendo console is going to be any more secure as far as how it runs software and hardware. But yeah, before the Yuzu lawsuit, I had not really paid attention or heard of Yuzu, nor had I paid attention or heard of Citra. Now I've heard of both of them, and so the Streisand effect is definitely in play. But there really isn't much more to say on that point. It's the same thing almost anybody else who doesn't have a dog in the fight is going to say. Apparently 5 minutes of the cancelled Time Splitters game footage has been shared online. This is what Time Splitters Next looked like in July of 2023. Noticeably though, they aren't actually linking to the footage, and I assume that this is very much just pitch footage for a project that probably wasn't greenlit. The problem with the idea of Time Splitters is you just are making a lot of different art assets, because you're making the concept of a shooter that is supposed to compete against something like GoldenEye or Halo or whatever your popular first-person shooter, third-person shooter might be these days. But on top of that, you're going through time into different time zones, different eras, which means you have to reskin everything over and over again, and that's just too demanding, particularly even if you are trying to lock it down to a comic book art style. It's still too demanding. It's too much work for not enough reward. The maker of the Cat Lady games highlighted that Burnhouse Lane, we'll get the magnifier here, has exactly 666 reviews in total, or at least it did when he took the screenshot, and he was saying definitely don't post any more reviews and break this number. Not that Burnhouse Lane or the Devil Came Through Here series even really deals with a biblical Mark of the Beast style devil. yeah, you don't really run into a character like that in any of the games I've played. I haven't played Burnhouse Lane, but I still imagine you're not going to actually run into an actual biblical Satan or Lucifer or Mark of the Beast, which I imagine Mark of the Beast is actually not either Satan or Lucifer, but yet another evil character. The Suicide Squad game is delayed again on the Epic Games Store as Season 1 gets dated, and it is shocking, frankly, that there is even somebody willing to post this news around Suicide Squad, because it is such a dead in the water game. Here we can see the chart that they're showing here from probably SteamDB of like the concurrent player peak when Kill the Justice League, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League first started off good, and then just the extremely fast drop off going all the way down to below the level of below the level of Gotham Knights, which is a much older game and also didn't even have that well of a reception. And so Warner Brothers games have just not been doing well recently. Skull and Bones price has also been slashed by $25 after less than 3 weeks. So yeah, this first quadruple A game that was $70 is now being sold $25 cheaper, so below a $60 game. Mark Dodson, a video game voice actor, passed away at the age of 64. His decades-long career included voice work for Ghost Runner, Bindi, and the Nancy Drew franchises, which probably are some lesser played, lesser known games. And I own, I think, a decent amount of the Nancy Drew games, and I haven't played any of them really, other than the first one. Yeah. I hear by the third Nancy Drew they change everything up and they get a lot better, so I probably should skip the second and third one and just start with the ones that they say are actually good. He died from a heart attack over the weekend. We actually get a reason that he died. He's actually getting reported on by TMZ. He was at HorrorCon, so perhaps the stress of flying and going to an event gave him extra stress. I know this Bindi game by name, but I haven't actually played it. So Warner Brothers games haven't done particularly well recently, and yet after AT&T has acquired Warner Brothers, their first major layoff and shutdown here is to shut down Rooster Teeth after 21 years, which I guess maybe makes some sense. Rooster Teeth has had some controversies and scandals around it. The Ruby series as a concept maybe worked, but I'm not sure it ever actually did work as a property and as a final product. Genlock, I guess I may have heard of that, but that's about all I could say. And Warner Brothers more than likely does not need to or want to maintain a animation studio that they probably could already do in one of their other animation studios with so much controversy. Rooster Teeth definitely would have been the outsider group amongst Warner Brothers subsidiaries. So yeah, low-hanging fruit to shut down. And inherently, it may be just a case that the fandom around Ruby may keep Ruby alive, or a fandom around Genlock may keep it alive long enough that they could just hand these IPs over to a different internal Warner Brothers animation studio to animate, or they could just straight up license it to another animation studio someplace in India and have them do all the animations. It definitely feels to me like Ruby as a concept just never really hit it off big, whereas perhaps if they had launched later and maybe they laid the groundwork so other things like Has Been Hotel could survive and grow. But yeah, had Ruby been a small group of people's passion project that then got picked up and rebooted and remade by Amazon Prime or Netflix, then it probably would have succeeded better. But then also that would have meant that they would have had to have started a much later time. They started off making the Red versus Blue cartoon mini animations and through using Halo to make the animations, and I frankly don't think they ever got particularly great at making animations or learned any tricks. Ruby started in 2013 as their first non-game original property. Then it went through several different owners before being acquired. Well, Warner Bros. Acquired it through AT&T, so Warner Bros. Probably didn't ever want it. In 2022, several ex-employees came forward about the studio's reportedly toxic culture. So there was a whole cancel attempt. Harassment, low pay crunch, all the kind of complaints that I heard. I'm not sure they ever got around. But that's not really what killed Rooster Teeth here. What killed Rooster Teeth here is just that Warner Brothers probably never wanted to deal with them in the first place, and the fact that they just didn't bring anything particularly valuable to the table as far as being animators or being writers or having IP that is popular enough. But admirably, Warner Brothers so far has not really tried to shut down any of the game companies or any of their other subsidiaries. I could see them at some point giving up on the CW completely and just trying to sell off and shut down those channels. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually does happen. But yeah, Warner Brothers still seems like they are back in game development despite like Arcane Studios. I believe it was the makers of Suicide Squad. Like, you definitely could have seen Warner Brothers having a knee-jerk reaction and shutting down Arcane Studios, and maybe they still will, but at least they're being slow and more procedural about it. Epic says that it can't bring its products to iOS as Apple has terminated its developer account. The long-running battle between the Fortnite and iPhone makers has taken another turn. I wouldn't be surprised if this is Epic making a mountain out of a molehill. But yeah, at least in Europe, Apple has been getting messages from the government to probably open up its walled garden, but maybe Apple is going to try to have its cake and eat it too and open up a walled garden for everybody other than Epic. This Stalker Legends of the Zone trilogy is now available for PS4 and Xbox One. This is, I imagine, the first 3 Stalker games: Shadows of Chernobyl, Clear Sky, and Call of Pripyat. I would assume each of these games are already available individually on PC, and so the bundle here may not really matter too much. Yeah. Weirdly, it is only coming to the PS4 and Xbox One though, not the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. Probably because these games are so old and that they really just don't need the extra power and can be backward compatible played on those newer consoles. Let's see. Compulsion Games was tweeting what? Well, they retweeted this person, a influencer marketing, leading influencer marketing for Bethesda, and she says that creators have got some biz advice here after seeing an influx of these this recently. Passports. Always have a valid passport. You don't want to be offered a cool opportunity out of the country and have to miss out and or stressfully rush order because your documents are expired. Which, I mean, boy, is that living in a different world than most people. To say the best thing you could do, or one of the things you can do for your business as a content creator, is have a valid passport, so you can be effectively bribed by being flown out to some foreign country and given a lavish vacation. In fairness, though, there is probably some logic to having a passport documented and ready to go. Having a backup documentation wouldn't be a terrible thought in case somebody steals your wallet and you don't have a driver's license or an ID of some other sort. Passports will work for that reason. And passports, I don't think, expire that quickly, so there probably is a good argument to that. But the vast majority of people, whether a content creator or just a normal person, is never going to be given some great opportunity to go out of the country unexpectedly, to be bribed with a free vacation. And this is probably an argument where a video game company perhaps shouldn't retweet somebody who is making such an elitist type of statement here. The toy maker Mattel, according to GameDeveloper.com, I believe, the toy maker Mattel is becoming a mobile game publisher. This is Barbie Sets publishing milestones. Or this Barbie Sets publishing milestones. I guess that's probably a joke. I kind of feel like at some point Mattel must have been a video game publisher in the past. That they would have self-published some Barbie game on Game Boy, or Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, something like that. But maybe not. Maybe they were just straight up licensing things. To be a mobile game publisher is not that special. It almost certainly just means that they plan on making some kind of Mattel based mobile games. I'm falling asleep now, so I'm starting to yawn. Apologies. Probably Barbie based mobile games, which in all fairness, if you absolutely feel the need to make yet another Barbie game, you're almost certainly going to make a bad Barbie game that's just like a dress up or a horse riding Barbie game. And if you're going to do that, you might as well make it a mobile game, cheap and easy, and not try to put it on consoles where it just would not stand up and compete. Final Fantasy XIV's full release on Xbox is coming this month, and a starter edition will be available through Xbox Game Pass Ultimate perks. 14, I believe, is the online mobile game, MMO. I don't recognize any of these characters at all from the game. It would be slightly interesting if it turned out that Final Fantasy XIV was rather successful on Xbox and you just had a generation of players just playing Final Fantasy XIV on Xbox and nothing else, and that was just their World of Warcraft for a new generation. Now when I look at these characters, there is also once again that scenario where one of these characters is in a bright pink jacket and fairly stands out compared to, say, this character who's in dark armor, and this character, and this character, and this character. This character is blue, maybe stands out a little bit, but you can't even see his head. This character is in red, kind of stands out. The yellow here kind of stands out. The blue here kind of stands out. You also have a high level of elf characters. This character stands out just for being short. So there is more variety here. At least 4 or 5 of these characters kind of stand out. But yeah, a lot of elf ears and several human ears. Or I guess you'd call those human ears. And this looks like a cat tail. Let's see, Square Enix has confirmed Sony exclusivity, however, for Final Fantasy VII's remake trilogy. Like the original Final Fantasy VII, PlayStation will be the only console for Square Enix remake games. And I wonder if that is a complete exclusivity or launch window exclusivity. Because it's kind of crazy to negotiate complete exclusivity. Even if you were going to negotiate complete exclusivity, it would be complete exclusivity with Sony until Sony made a certain amount of money, you would assume. But Square Enix is old school and crazy like that, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is just complete exclusivity forever. Which definitely makes an argument that if you want to play the Final Fantasy VII Remake, you should either play it on PlayStation, which is your only choice, or you play it on PC, which I think it is still coming to PC. Yeah. Final Fantasy Remake came to PC over a year after its PS4 launch, but the publisher never explicitly mentioned bringing it to Xbox or Nintendo. I imagine it wouldn't actually run on Nintendo Switch. And while this remake is very intriguing, I have to question if maybe its relevancy is a little bit lower than Square Enix thinks, and it's hurting itself more than it thinks by being exclusive to PlayStation. It definitely is locking in the feeling that they really only care about the Japanese audience playing the game. Persona 3 Reload Expansion Pass has been announced. It includes episode Aegis the Answer. The final chapter of Persona 3 Reload arrives in September. I think it also maybe includes some music from Persona 4. Yeah, and 5. So you get Persona 5 Royale extra background music set and Persona 4 Golden extra background set in Wave 1. So it's just music from the other games as background music, which maybe makes the game a little bit more varied. And then there's a Velvet costume and background music set for Wave 2. And then episode Aegis, The Answer, and Wave 3. So 2 parts of that expansion are just music. Now, that's not really a lot of content for an expansion pass, and I don't 100% believe that it is giving you everything that Persona 3 Gold would be giving you, even when it all is said and done. It doesn't feel like they are saying you can play as the female protagonist like you could in Persona 3 Gold, or that you can see all the content from Persona 3 Gold. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not a Persona 3 fan or Persona fan enough to, well, not really a fan at all. I haven't played any of the games. Yeah. The game Balatro, the still sales are growing up to 500,000 copies in 10 days, which does justify continuing to talk about it. Although I'm not really seeing a lot of people playing the game. It probably is one of these games that's somewhat simple, so trying to make footage on it doesn't probably work as well as people would like. Let's see. What was Crystal Dynamics talking about? 4 hours ago they said, with the 25th anniversary of Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver just around over the horizon, they want to celebrate the milestone and highlight the love dedicated fans have shown over the decades. Help us choose your fan favorite artworks in the survey. And so they've linked to a survey here, which, yeah, I think you would find that particularly annoying here, to have fan art be shown to celebrate a game that desperately needs a reboot and remake, and absolutely seems like it never will have a reboot or remake. In all fairness, Legacy of Kain is very much an edgelord type of game, so it would need some polish and some nuance to be remade and rebooted. Otherwise it's going to come off as being just very awkward and not something that people would really want to play. So, yeah. In that, I do think you would need to consider something. I guess I have to click on some to see some more. Nope. So that was all the fan art that's available. You can select 5 favorites, and then they ask you if you want to submit some of your own fan art. But yeah, that's not what people want to hear. Certainly, is the let's highlight the fan art for a 25th anniversary. We want to hear that they're announcing a reboot and that they've been funded to make a reboot. Let's see if we can see if the fans are agreeing with what I believe. Number 1, remake this masterpiece. Nothing to better to celebrate it with a reboot remake. Remake the game for the fans, announce the remake. I'd love to see a remaster or even a remake. It definitely feels like a remake is probably the twist to go. Please release a remake. Alright, so we don't have to go any further. I was 100% on the nose as far as what people want to hear. And almost certainly it's what they knew people were going to say, so why stir a pot unless you actually do announce a remake? So it's going to either be a horrible mistake for them to to not announce a remake and announce the 25th anniversary instead of just not saying anything until the exact day, or they are setting themselves up for a remake announcements, which would be the thing gamers want. Alan Wake 2 has been optimized on PC version, and they have decided to lower the minimum spec requirements. Now, low in this case, instead of being 720p, is a 1080p resolution at 30 frames per second, and it only requires a 1070 GeForce, which is pretty old, 6 gigabytes of VRAM, and let's see, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 90 gigabytes of SSD storage. That's still pretty high. They do want a more powerful CPU compared to the Horizon Definitive Edition with an i5 7600K. And certainly they have ray tracing separated here, and if you want ray tracing on, the low amount of ray tracing skips it up to needing a 3700 GeForce. But Ultra without ray tracing requires a 4070, so you almost certainly never need to do Ultra without doing ray tracing on medium. But yeah, and as far as the OS, they just want Windows 10 or Windows 11. It is much more reasonable to optimize your game, certainly, to say at bare minimum it will run at 1080p. I seriously doubt there's anybody rocking TVs or monitors at this point that can't handle 1080p resolution. The new CEO, Neil Mohan of YouTube, has announced that you can collab in some way with shorts. So you can use the collab to record a short in a side-by-side / split screen format with other long format videos and shorts to see how it works. So I'll probably watch this video, but there's no reason to watch it on screen. But yeah, there might be some benefit there for me if I could connect my YouTube shorts that I'm making to the live streams in which I make the YouTube shorts. Yeah, there might be some benefit and crossover there. Although it would be a very weak connection, because when I look at a game that's coming out on Steam and decide to make a YouTube short on it, those two things are fairly disconnected. Sony has announced that Ghost of Tsushima's director's cut for PC. I guess it's coming to PC in May. And that was from Video Games Chronicles, and so is this. WWE 2K24 has blurred out Vince McMahon footage, in being partially blurred out in their actual footage that they have in the parts where there would be clips from actual footage, which at a certain point, instead of blurring it out, which is a lazy and low effort, you might as well just remove the footage completely. Just lose the footage and then maybe bring it back later, or maybe just crop it if you're going to do that. But inherently, whenever Vince McMahon was on stage, he'd have a microphone in his hand and he would talk a lot, so almost any footage with him in it is going to be him talking a lot. So unless you're going to make a fake replacement owner of WWE, then and superimpose that replacement character. Just not going to get anywhere with that. The reason they're blowing him out and censoring him is arguably kind of dumb, not because it's not serious accusations of sexual misconduct that have been accused by him, but just kind of dumb because the censorship's not going to really accomplish anything. You hardly are putting a platform for Vince McMahon to say anything new by showing old footage. You're just denying the past and embracing a Stalinistic tactic of erasing people from history. I recently saw an article talking about how Salvador Dali, I believe, was a very mean, cruel person who would like torture animals to get the inspiration to do his paintings. Does that mean that his paintings shouldn't be in galleries shown around the world? No. It if anything, should just be that you should tell the truth and let the viewer decide. Perhaps the best way to handle something like this, if you have to handle it at all, is to put a notice every time he's on screen about learning more about Vince McMahon, or just put a notice at the very beginning that is more nebulous. Some of the wrestlers and some of the people in this archival footage have had very serious allegations alleged against them. Instead of being the hand of censorship, we encourage you to research the matter on your own and come to your own conclusions. You write something like that. Just make sure you get it written correctly so it doesn't blow back in your face. Either way, this is going to potentially blow back in your face. You're going to have anti-censorship people complaining about the blurring, and you're going to have it blow up in your face if these allegations prove to be untrue, which they probably are true. And even if the allegations are proven true, the anti-censorship people still aren't going to be happy, so it still blows it up in your face. But yeah, never have we seen such blatant censorship in that Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon have been completely removed from being shown in the games. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says Spearhead Games is laying off the majority of its dev team. The Canadian studio is also halting development on its early access Unforetold Witchstone. So, yeah, the majority of its development team, after struggling to secure funding. At a certain point, if you're going to do that, you might as well just shut the doors. And inherently, there probably should be some kind of law that if you lay off more than half of your staff over a certain period of time, say 6 months to a year, that it should automatically trigger a bankruptcy of some sort, or closure of a company of some sort, to just say, no, you can't do that much damage to society by laying off people and then manage to stay around because you've proven yourself to be such a unlucky / bad boss that they shouldn't just let bad bosses have an unlimited number of tries and attempts and tricks to keep themselves getting paid, to keep themselves in business. Let's see. Speaking of bad bosses, we have a Video Games Chronicle article in that Capcom is increasing its starting salary in Japan by more than 25%. existing employees will also get a bonus and a raise in salary, which one would hope that the bonus and the raise in salary equals more than 25%. Almost certainly this is Capcom just raising their pay to what everybody else in the industry in Japan is paying. I doubt this is a case that's moving them to actually be more competitive. And I would say working at Capcom is probably not super appealing for a lot of game developers unless you want to make Street Fighter games, which haven't been good recently, or Resident Evil game remakes, which have been good, or Monster Hunter games, which have been good. And you probably aren't going to be making any Devil May Cry games. Very possibly you'll be making something much smaller, or trying to make yet another game as a service Resident Evil multiplayer spin-off game. They've made several of those and failed. Maybe they've finally given up on that concept. So the existing pay for a new graduate at Capcom was around $1,560 a month. I imagine this is working well over 40 hours a week, and they've now bumped it up to about $2,000 a month, which, yeah, probably isn't that much. Even if they weren't working out of Tokyo, which I would suspect that Capcom is in Tokyo, $2,000 a month probably isn't that much money, even for a Japanese company. What they need here as a comparison that would be very helpful is what is the average starting salary for a new graduate in other kinds of programming development jobs outside of video games. Let's see. There is a story here from GameDeveloper.com that's been updated. Apparently a game called Small Radio's Big Television has been mandated as being delisted by Warner Brothers. Imagine this again as Warner Brothers clearing house and getting rid of things that they really don't care about. The subheadline here is the email wasn't so much a discussion about retiring the game, it was legal notice. In terms of how it affected me, it's kind of depressing. And that's what they decided to so I've never heard of this game though, so it's probably pretty small. Warner Brothers seems to be planning on pulling it in the next 60 days. This is very possibly a case where Warner Brothers just doesn't want game companies giving them small amounts of profit that they have to pay an accountant for. Let's see. Now, Adult Swim Games was another. I guess this may have been published under the Adult Swim Games category, like Pocket Morty's, Samurai Jack Battle Through Time, Rain World, and Death's Gambit. These games too might get pulled from launch, but I bet it isn't the case. I bet this is very much Warner Brothers is just trying to streamline everything and tighten everything up. Although this does also highlight a problem that if you wanted to play this game, Small Radios, Big Televisions, as a gamer, it sucks that a copyright holder can effectively abandon a game and delist it and make it impossible for people to buy or download it, instead of, really it should be the only option is Warner Brothers should just put it in the public domain if they're going to abandon a game and give up their claim of copyright. If it were a case that you had to pay even like $5 a month to maintain the copyright on something, just a $5 a month copyright tax, I think you'd very quickly see even major companies like Warner Brothers putting things in the public domain and spinning it like it was a generous thing that they were doing, just because they don't want to pay for the accounting of some product. Apparently, according to Video Games Chronicle, Dragon's Dogma 2 won't have any graphics mode on console. The PS5 and Xbox Series X and S versions will have an uncapped frame rate. So it doesn't seem like they're into the idea of having performance or quality modes, which I guess maybe indicates you don't have to have performance or quality modes in games. I would have kind of thought maybe that was a requirement these days, but apparently not. Double Fine is looking for a financial analyst, financial manager, which I think does probably highlight that Double Fine is not going to get shut down by Microsoft, although you never know. They could be listing jobs and then all of a sudden Microsoft decides to pull the plug on Double Fine. But yeah, I don't think Microsoft really wants to pull the plug on any big game developers that have a name behind them. They probably have a bunch of smaller companies that they could shutter if they needed to, or they could just lay off people in general. Video Games Chronicle says after 8 months of silence, the Multiversus X account is teasing an announcement. The fighting game is expected to fully launch this year after being going silent for 8 months, which is a very weird way to do a beta, do an early access, and then pull your game. Maybe they got so much feedback as far as what they wanted to improve that they figured that they could have a second bite at the apple and launch the game in a much better state. And well, most people have forgot about the mediocre reviews and reception they got in early access, which is, I think, what happened is that they got mediocre reception and they really were hoping for massive reception. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com says the Persona franchise sales surpassed 22 million copies worldwide, and Steam devs now can tweak the length of launch discounts. Launch sales on Steam can now run for 2 weeks. So you can now range the launch duration can be between 7 and 14 days, which it was previously only to launch it for 1 week, which I assume would be 7 days around the time it launched, not actually a week, because if you launched it, say, on Wednesday and it went 7 days, I doubt people would call that a week. A week is not a bespoke amount of 7 days, it's a bespoke amount of time between Sunday and Saturday. Or Monday and Sunday, maybe. Immediately, you're going to see people using that to their advantage to cheat and claim that they had like twice as many sales during their launch period because they have twice as long of a launch period. Okay, I'm gonna try and burn through the games that came out on Steam fairly quickly here. We'll give this one a chance. I've already looked at these games because my macro ran a little weirdly. So this is the second time today I will have looked at these games, but I wasn't paying that close of an attention to what I looked at. This one jumped out as potentially an IT repair game. It probably won't be that good, but this screenshot where it looks like you're trying to diagnose some kind of card scanner or RFID scanner, and this motherboard computer building screenshot all looked interesting. And here you have what looks like an Arduino Uno, like an exact copy of an Arduino Uno, not some fictionalized version of it. In reality though, the computer programming and the computer motherboard building and working on an Arduino Uno and working on an RFID scanner, that's all fairly varied activities that it's unlikely one IT person would be doing all of those on consistent basis. As you very likely would, if you're doing software, would always be in software. If you're doing hardware, you'd be building computers or repairing computers. You wouldn't be working on microcontrollers like an Arduino Uno. You'd almost never be in IT working on an Arduino Uno unless there's just some weird piece of equipment like an air conditioner that you need to control remotely. And even then, an Arduino Uno doesn't really make sense because it doesn't have Wi-Fi built into it or Ethernet built into it. Yeah. So there is some problem there. Here we have what claims to be a word-based action puzzle game, and this isn't going to be interesting enough to make a YouTube short on, but I would be interested in seeing if there is some kind of action puzzle game you could make around playing a Scrabble type game. Here we begin to see what probably is a series of scam games, which, if these are all scam games, this is really bad for Valve, that they seem to have either let scammers go wild without stopping them, or they have just dropped the ball horribly and are on the sides of scammers. Only Up was this incredibly popular game that I do not believe looked this way, and it was removed from sale by the developer and publisher on Steam, and now we have a new game labeled Only Up, which that probably should have made some red flags. Unless, of course, this is actually the same developer and he has, I don't know, polished his asset flip Only Up game to a higher level. Like, inherently this doesn't look terrible, but it still is a game that is really just built around a lot of asset flips that you're just gonna jump on as you go higher and higher. I guess again I'll put this on the follow list and see if it stays up for purchase and if people actually appreciate it. Here we have a text-based game. It's just not going to be good enough for me to say yes to it. And then we see a bunch of this. And so either this is a case where somebody has put a whole bunch of what look like Game Boy ROMs in an emulator and is trying to sell them one by one, or there is a publisher here that is just trying to sell a bunch of the ROMs they own that is going through an emulator. These do look like actual Game Boy games that may have been released back in the day. Regardless, you have this problem where they are just flooding Steam with them. And this definitely feels like this is just Japanese developers. I have a bundle here for 13 different games for $43.07. Rumble Dragon, easily confused with something like Double Dragon, but that doesn't mean there wasn't some kind of rip-off Double Dragon type game on Game Boy. But yeah, definitely flooding Steam with far too many games all at the same time. And again, this is just an example of where no single publisher should be allowed on Steam to put this many games out at the same time. It just doesn't make any sense at all to do that. And see, this may just be the same one or two scammers under a bunch of different names putting scam games out. We may just be seeing a case of a direct attack against the credibility of Steam. In the case of Typing of the Undead, this is a name confusion game of Typing of the Dead, and frankly just looks like an asset flip game that barely even has typing in it. Of the screenshots, you can only barely see typing happening here and here. Every other screenshot pretty much devoid of the typing sections. Let's see. This doesn't look quite visually polished enough for me to say yes to it, I don't think. First person mystery puzzle game. The only thing I think I could maybe do is be generous and put this on the follow list, but I imagine this is just an asset flip garbage game. And then Stellar Ghost Settlers. It's already on the follow list. I don't know why that's the case. I did move these tabs around a little bit, so if it's on the follow list, that doesn't mean I can say no to it. Then you have a somewhat intriguing visuals for a Japanese only game. We're calling it a roguelike. Then we have World War Armies, which is already mixed. I'll say no to that. Chrono Recorder is supposed to be a 3D puzzle game where you manipulate time and gravity. This is probably not a game worth checking out, but I'll put it on the follow list. Again though, not visually appealing enough to make a YouTube short around it. And then Snowflower is yet another Japanese only visual novel, which we are now seeing a fairly high number of those cases. The animation style here actually very good, but not the animation style you tend to actually see in video games. It feels much more like an anime by a more unique artist. Let's see, Bolt and Punch. Let's see. Give that a chance. Battle Cakes is already on my fall list. Toki Owner Island, I think we can say no to. So that's going to leave us with really only about 5 games that I'm going to make YouTube shorts on, which it definitely seems like it's up and down as far as how many games I'm willing to give a chance to. This game, Melatonin, is already overwhelmingly positive. I don't see why, but I can't inherently argue with 95% positivity with over 4,500 reviews. So that should go on the default list. Probably should go on the wish list. The Somber Echoes looks intriguing. It's a Metroidvania type game. I hope it actually comes out. And then this Fruit Mountain game, perhaps not that intriguing. 3D physics game where you stack fruits. Yeah, I think that's probably not really needing a follow to be on the follow list. And then No Rest for the Wicked looks somewhat intriguing. So yeah, that's all the games I had. Now, even though my macros to open all the tabs didn't work particularly well today, I do think I have everything kind of set up better going forward. I may not have tweaked the banners still, but it does seem like I'm slowly making progress when I find 5 seconds to remember to work on things. Here we can see Helldivers 2 is falling downward again. Pal World falling downward again. Last Epoch falling downward again. 3 games that could have been fairly major successes losing momentum quickly. Rocket Blade Point maintaining success, I would say. Apex Legends skyrocketing back up, which, yeah, wonder what happened in Apex Legends. And PUBG skyrocketing back up. I guess the Steam DB page didn't happen today. So I've gotten more consistent about showing the Steam front page, but I'm not 100% sure whether that's a good thing, nor am I 100% sure that I'm what to actually show here. Should I just show first couple banners? Should I scroll down to at least this point? I saw a review for this game, the Thaumaturge. It wasn't particularly positive. Helldivers 2 in the Steam Deck, still top sellers. Pal World falling down. Baldur's Gate possibly falling down. Yeah, I do question if I wouldn't have a better experience playing Baldur's Gate 3 than Hand of Fate 2. It might very well be a very similar type of experience, with Baldur's Gate 3 being a lot better. And then this cell is interesting because a Arc System Works publisher sale being hidden almost at the very bottom of the Steam page before it starts to scroll down to third party, just randomly generated and suggested games. It's also interesting that you can have a third party event presented by Arc System Works and then your art is showing significant side boob, which I'm pretty sure Valve isn't going to be super happy with that being so close to the front page. Big thigh being shown here too. And then they're promoting Arc System Works games. Mostly these would be Guilty Gear fighting games, a lot of which are on my wish list. But the question there certainly is going to come down to whether I actually am going to ever play any fighting games. Chaos Code is yet another fighting game. Arcana Heart 3 Love Max, I think, is a older all-girl, more girl-on-girl lewd fighting game, although I don't think it gets super explicit. The Missing JJ Machiafield is a standout game, not a fighting game. Yeah, and then there's some other games here that aren't fighting games, but yeah, the vast majority of these are fighting games or River City spin-off games that are not really the River City games you would have wanted to play. Yeah. So that is that. I did for some reason mess up clips in the last recording, so I didn't make clips. I should always make clips, and I'm definitely still working on the programming to get clips and chapter time markers all working at the same time. Inherently, that means making two types of chapter markers, one for the recording, one for the streaming, so I can pause the recording and the times will be different. And having clips that could be made from the live stream. Although, even if I got just chapter markers and clips from the live stream, that would be a good enough start anyways to see if it's worth the extra effort. So let's go through these headlines fairly quickly before I'm gonna have to go back to the bathroom again. Well, you know what? Let's just take another break. I'll try and make it quick. I'll be right back. Okay, back again. So we're gonna go through the YouTube clips, I guess, the headlines. I should just call them headlines. Yes, I am making them into YouTube clips, but there's no point on that. We'll go through Video Games Chronicle headlines here and see how many of these are even new. Notably, we really haven't had any major news stories to talk about today. And that partner direct, like, we didn't see any real articles so far actually talk about any of those games. We'll see if that changes here. Epic says it can't bring products to iOS as Apple has terminated its developer account. Final Fantasy XIV's full release on Xbox is coming this month. Sony has secured the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy as a console exclusive. Sony has announced Ghost of Tsushima's director's cut for PC. A Princess Peach Showtime demo may be coming soon. Indie developer makes his game free after being told Warner Bros. Will be delisting it. So yeah, that's what I thought was the case for this game, is that I'd seen it was available for free. And I may have already grabbed it. Let's see. The game will remain on Steam. So we go to Steam right now. Of course, a game that's about to be delisted is not really a game that I probably would ever bother to review. And looking at the screenshots here, you can see why Warner Brothers would just give up on this game. Like, a pathetic 77 reviews since 2016. That is far too few. 77% positive overall. We can see here Adult Swim games being published on Steam. You get just a general idea of what other games might get pulled. That being said, if games are going to be pulled, I would suspect it would be ones that are reviewed very lightly or very barely positive or less than positive. But then Rise and Shine is a game that I already own, and Glitter Mitten Grove was published by Adult Swim Games. Yeah. Headlander from Double Fine. I'm pretty sure. No, I guess maybe Double Fine didn't make Headlander. These are all kind of weird, silly games, but I just don't really believe that all of these would get delisted by Warner Brothers. They could be. It wouldn't be that big of a loss, but yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rick and Morty game gets pulled just because of the voice actors in the Rick and Morty game. But yeah, I don't think all of these games are going to get delisted. Just this one for now. Stalker Legends of the Zone trilogy revealed by retailers. The 3-game collection includes the original Stalker Shadows of Chernobyl, its prequel Stalker Clear Sky, and its sequel Stalker Call of Pripyat. Released for PC in 2007, 2008, and 2009 respectively. Which, yeah, really highlights how old those games are going to be. How to watch today's Xbox Partner Preview event. Now, in this case, this is probably a headline I shouldn't bother reading, because the headlines and the clips are triggered by me making a certain level of noise into the microphone, and if I didn't want to make a clip, I could just easily have just read this and closed the page, and then I would have had clips that were more relevant. Whereas this is the kind of clip that won't be relevant in the future, and if somebody is searching how to watch today's Xbox Partner Program in the future, this information will be absolutely irrelevant and unhelpful. WWE's 2K24 Vince McMahon footage has been partially blurred out. Helldivers 2 studio CEO says it's not being acquired by PlayStation. Helldivers 2 patch adds planetary hazards including meteor showers and fire tornadoes. It does seem like this most recent patch from Helldivers 2 is changing quite a bit, and people seem to be enthusiastic enough around Helldivers 2 that they are discussing the patch, which may be a good thing. It's probably a good thing. Excuse me. Capcom is increasing its starting salary in Japan by more than 25%. Dragon's Dogma 2 won't have any graphics modes on console. Capcom Highlights digital event has been announced. Here you can see from this screenshot or this image that Capcom is probably going to be highlighting more Japanese centric games or more Asian style looking games. After 8 months of silence, the Multiverse's X account is teasing an announcement. The physical version of Baldur's Gate 3 will now come on 4 discs. Arrowhead says Helldivers 2 mechs are deploying soon. Warner Brothers reiterates plans to increase focus on free-to-play and live service games. It plans to rely less on the very volatile AAA console game business. So yeah, we definitely, if we take them to their word, we know where Warner Brothers is going. More mobile games, more live service, more free-to-play games, less Shadows of Mordor style games. Which for their IP in particular, that might make a lot of sense. Even though Hogwarts Legacy has been very popular, the vast majority of everything else they own really hasn't worked as AAA games. It is still weird. I want to double check at some point whether they own the rights to Supernatural or not, because it seems very strange that they can't negotiate some kind of Supernatural AAA game or even a live service game around Supernatural. It'd make a lot of sense. You could make at least a card game on that IP, particularly since the game is the TV series after 15 seasons is over. It's kind of crazy they're not just trying to make a reboot of the series, but they kind of tried and it didn't work. March's PlayStation Plus Essential games are now available to claim. Let's see, what game is this? Is this Sifu? I'd have to assume this is Sifu. Horizon Forbidden West Complete Edition PC specs have been confirmed. New Xbox Game Pass titles for console, PC, and cloud have been revealed. Interesting. No More Heroes 3 is an odd game to be announced. It's coming to, just now coming to Xbox Game Pass. Preservationists upset at Switch's lawsuits that shut down the 3DS emulator. 5 minutes of the cancelled Time Splitters game footage has been shared online. Suicide Squad is delayed again on the Epic Game Store as Season 1 it gets dated. Skull and Bones' price has been slashed by $25 after less than 3 weeks. Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone Season 2 Reloaded have been detailed. The new game from Titanfall's director is reportedly set in the same universe. It's claimed the project, which isn't Titanfall 3, is still in the prototyping phase. Switch emulator creator settles Nintendo lawsuit for $2.4 million. Microsoft will stream an Xbox partner preview event this week. That event has already occurred at this point, and no news has come out about the third-party games that were presented. Xbox is launching a $700 SpongeBob Special Edition Series X console bundle. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and Paper Mario Remake news could be coming this week. And so that is the Video Games Chronicle articles. Let's now go through the Komatsu articles. Let's see. Kunitsugama Path of the Goddess launches in 2024. I don't recognize this name. Let's see, this may have actually been one of the Partner Direct games, and that may very well be part of the reason why there haven't been too many articles about these games, is they are all extremely obscure games. I would say yes to looking at this trailer, but frankly I just don't feel like I have time today. I probably never should have time, or never will have time. Frostpunk 2 for PC launches July 25th. Let's see. Probably have a release date now, so we can make another YouTube short on this. Tales of Kinzera Zau gameplay reveal trailer. Yeah, another trailer that I don't feel like I have time to watch. Let's see what the Steam page looks like. Looks kind of like a Metroidvania game. It is a Metroidvania game. The first Berserker Kazan gameplay reveal trailer is available. Persona 3 Reload expansion pass announced, includes episode Aegis the Answer. The Sinking City 2 announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. It's due out in 2025 and a Kickstarter campaign is planned. If I recall correctly, the Sinking City 1 was one of the Frogware's embattled games, where the publisher and developer were fighting back and forth, and I'm not sure I ever really could figure out whether it was Frogwares at fault or whether it was the publisher at fault. It did kind of feel like Frogwares and the publisher both had kind of a dirty hands in the dealings. That won't be the problem here with this game, which is self-published, I would assume. But the bigger problem around the Sinking City is that I just think, like so many games that have interesting or different settings or stories, they just miss the mark on the actual gameplay mechanics and the gameplay. And maybe they are just perhaps too obsessed with interesting cities and stories and not interested enough in just making a good game. And it's not that hard to realize that the first thing in developing a game is to make good gameplay first before anything else, and yet so many game developers seem to miss that point. Creature Tamer action adventure game Creatures of Ava announced for the Xbox Series and PC. This game looked somewhat like a Pokemon Snap type game. It doesn't feel like there's Pokeballs. It doesn't feel like you're trying to fight different creatures. It may not be a game that has as many creatures as you might want. Looking at the thumbnail up there, it looks to me like you're seeing 4 or 5 creatures, and that might be it. But maybe there's a way to make a game like that work, where you save 4 or 5 different types of creatures multiple times over, or in saving the creatures, it is just a longer journey and more difficult experience to save or train a creature. People probably will be keeping their eyes on these creatures on this game as it gets closer to release. The Alters is coming to Xbox Game Pass at launch, and it has a gameplay reveal trailer. This is a game that I believe was announced a while ago, a long while ago. It is generally a base building management game where you have this guy who can alter parts of his genetic memory of the past and create clones of himself if something else had happened in his past. So if anything, it's making physical body clones for the most part, but then altering the memories of the people, or it's chronologically altering the events and pulling out what would be alternate timeline versions of himself in this giant wheel base on this foreign space alien planet. I don't know if this game really deserves another YouTube short, but I probably haven't made one already, so I'll do it because they still don't really have a launch date for it. Third-person stealth action deck builder called Sleight of Hand has been announced for Xbox Series and PC. It does feel like now that every announcement from Microsoft is going to be PC and Xbox, and that should just be the expectation. We probably won't ever see any major games that aren't PC compatible. Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy console exclusive to PlayStation confirms Sony Interactive Entertainment. Valiant Hearts Coming Home is coming to PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on March 7th. I'd assume that this is a sequel, but maybe not. Looks like it is a mobile game. It came to the App Store and Google Play to Netflix subscribers. And it doesn't seem like they have a Steam link at the moment. It is kind of surprising Netflix hasn't tried to have its own game store or launcher for Netflix games on PC. But Netflix, I don't even think has a app to view Netflix on PC, so you just watch it through a browser, which is probably good enough. Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut is coming to PC on May 16th. Let's see. This is probably the kind of example where now I would need to spend some extra time to go find the original Ghost of Tsushima and make sure I don't accidentally buy that instead of the Director's Cut. House Flipper 2 Spring Update is now available. PS5 and Xbox Series versions have been delayed to April 10th. A update on a popular game I think does justify making a new YouTube short on it. Although it is questionable how many House Flipper updates or games can you make. Space Invaders Deck Commander, the board game, announced for all consoles and PC, which seems like a weird translation of a video game to a board game back to a video game. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a real world board game that did exist at one time and came out, but I don't recall ever seeing a Space Invaders board game. There very possibly was one, and I just missed it. Retro indie focused publisher Rocket Games announces its establishment. Up to 10 physical games are due out in 2024. We'll see how that goes, I guess. First games are Space Invaders Deck Commander, the board game, and Spooky Jump Scare Mansion HD renovations. So, it seems like they're going to be a publisher, or attempt to be a publisher. Chainsaw wielding bunny Metroidvania game The Weird Dream launches March 7th for PC and later for 2024 for Switch. That is one heck of a description for a game, but I don't think it's actually that inaccurate. Weirdly, that means if the Lollipop Chainsaw remake comes out in 2024, you're going to have two games in which a female protagonist is wielding a chainsaw, which is probably one too many per year. Celeste Crown of the Magistar is now available for PS5. It already is available on Steam. Let's see how that is being received. Turn-based tactical RPG. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give it more thought as far as whether I want to put a game like this on the wish list. It kind of looks particularly boring. I'm losing steam here, I definitely can feel it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants Unleashed launches Q4 2024 for all consoles and PC. We are potentially going to have too many Ninja Turtle games at this point. No, Ninja Turtles is having a resurgence, but it's going to run the danger of just being oversaturated if they're not careful. Too many cartoons, too many comics, too much nostalgia for the original series, too much video games. The Famitsu review scores for issue 1840 are out, giving Eternites 28 out of 40, particularly low. Macro's Shooting Insight 29 out of 40, not much better. And Skull of Bones 30 out of 40. So 3 real stinkers by those metrics, although they still are all getting 7s or higher from the 4 reviewers. Which, yeah, we still have no way of really adjusting that. Although, what you could do as a review website is take a January or February to lower your scores and reset everything. Just to say, we're not going to review any games in January of 2025, and we're going to lower our score set so that an average game gets 5 out of 10. Not 7 out of 10. But yeah. What they probably should do, as far as scores, and it's kind of stupidly obvious, give every game a score at least with the year in front of it. So every game that has a 2003 in front of it would have been released in 2003. So a 2003 7 would be a 7 out of 10 for 2003, and then no way would be compatible with a 2004 7. Maybe you change it up and maybe have letters instead of numbers, but you just make it very obvious that the numbers are just not compatible when you're comparing different years to different games, or even maybe different quarters and different months. Anyways, moving on. Stalker Legends of the Zone trilogy for PS4 pre-orders have gone live in Japan. Midnight Ghost Hunt launches March 21st. 4 versus 4 hide and seek game. Rated very positively. But if it is a 4 versus 4 game, it is not something that really needs to be on the fault list for me, because I'm just never going to play it. Neptunia Game Maker R Evolution launches in May in the West, available both physically and digitally. I feel like this is yet another Neptunia game that's coming to the West outside of the other 3 that were announced in the last stream. Yeah. I guess I pretty much just have to leave it at that. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties Definitive Edition is now available for the PS4 and 5, Xbox Series, and Switch. Let's see if they have a Steam link here. No, they don't. Moving on. PlayStation India Hero Project titles announced. Meteoria, The Race Against Space-Time, Fishbowl, Mukti, Requital, Gates of Blood, Suri, The Seventh Note. A creature collecting adventure RPG, Home of the Yokai, has been announced for PC. Yokai being one of the words for spirits in Japanese. This is probably not something that would catch my attention, but I'll give it a chance. Xbox Game Pass has MLB The Show 2024, Lightyear Frontier, Control Ultimate Edition, and more in early to mid-March. No More Heroes 3 and Paw Patrol do kind of stand out as very different types of games, but I guess that's not a bad thing. The Legends of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak launches July 5th in the West, and yet another Legend of Heroes game. Almost certainly are too many Legend of Heroes or Legends games in general to ever try and make the argument to play all of them. I guess that's something Persona has going for it, in that while there are several remakes of the Persona 3, 4, and 5 games, ideally there's only 3 that you actually would need to play. Turbo Golf Racing launches April 4th. My first instinct would be to not even bother to make a YouTube short around this, but if they bother to advertise, I'll try and make a YouTube short around it. Side-scrolling roguelite adventure platformer Dragon is Dead has been announced for PC. It looks more horrific than what you normally would expect. What's funny is it kind of looks like a Castlevania game, yet they're not trying to call it a Metroidvania, instead calling it a hack and slash roguelite action platformer. Not sure I know what the distinct difference between that and Castlevania would be. Let's see, Gawkin the Idolmaster for iOS and Android has been announced. This was the Idolmaster game teased. Here you have a different kind of anime girl than I would expect to see for an Idolmaster game series. But whatever. Looks like there might be multiple girls in the pop group. Yeah, I question if maybe Bandai is just late to the party doing yet another Idolmaster game at this point. Astra Knights of Vita launches April 2nd. I kind of wish that there was some way to see these Japanese RPG games, or RPG games in general, and be better at curating which ones actually have a chance of being good and which ones are going to be dead in the water at launch. But I don't think there's really a way to figure that out. Anyways, Toho Spell Carnival has been delayed to June 6th in Japan. Capcom highlights digital events set for March 7th and 11th. Persona series sales have topped 22.6 million. Dune Awakening Survive Arrakis trailer and Creating Worlds developer diary and screenshots are available on Gamatsu.com, at Gamatsu.com. Xbox Partner Preview livestream set for March 6th. 30 minutes of more than a dozen new trailers. Sin Duality Echoes of Ada closed beta test set for March 28th to April 1st. So we're going to have a game with Ada in the name and a game with Ava, AVA in the name, very close to each other, getting released. Cataclysmo launches July 16th. Looks like it's a tower defense game. VTuber Natsumi Kamashiro visual novel Natsumi Ryoran high spec new kin Yuko no Rinai Kitan has been announced for the PS4 and 5, Switch, PC, iOS, and Android. That certainly is a Japanese mouthful. Skier Ritual launches April 18th for the PS5 and the Xbox Series and PC. Let's see what this looks like. Feels fairly Bioshocky. Yeah, so if that came out of early access, looking at some decent reception. You shoot your way through relentless waves of various horrors. Yeah. Maybe it's too wave-based for my taste. Very possibly the case. Melatonin is coming to the PS5 on March 12th. And we know we already made a YouTube short on that, so there's really no reason to try and make a second one. So then that's going to bring us to the GameDeveloper.com articles, and then we can be done for today. Warner Brothers shut down Rooster Teeth after 21 years. Square Enix confirms Sony exclusivity for Final Fantasy VII's Remake trilogy. Balatro sales grow to 500,000 copies sold in 10 days. Spearhead Games is laying off the majority of its dev team. Capcom is raising graduate salary in Japan to attract exceptional talent. Bit Reactor's Star Wars strategy game unaffected by recent EA cuts. Outward developer 9 Dots transitions to a third-party publishing. Persona franchise sales surpassed 22 million copies worldwide. Update Small Radio's Big Television dev says mandated Warner Brothers delisting is kind of depressing. Toolmaker Mattel is becoming a mobile game publisher. Steam devs can now tweak the length of launch discounts. Launch sales on Steam can now run for 2 weeks instead of 7 days. Can now run for 14 days. And probably something in between there, too. Obituary Mark Dodson, video game voice actor, passed away at age 64. Switch emulator Yuzu reaches a 2.4 million settlement with Nintendo. Baldur's Gate 3 physical Xbox release will run on 4 discs. Tim developer Crema will end major support for the MMO in the summer. Which, that's a little surprising. Update, Australian studio Taurus Games hibernating after laying off dev team. The studio has laid off its entire development team and is now a one-person company. Which, yeah, he's just using flowery language to say the company is hibernating. And yeah, I've moved around some of my programming, so now we did move directly into the end of show tab. So I'm making small progress there. Yeah. Once again, starting the stream at the time that probably is the best time for me to stream puts me in this weird position where I'm starting to fall asleep. So, yeah, I don't feel like I was as high energy as I would have liked to have been today. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, and keep on watching. Thanks.